How's it going, everyone? I hope this day is finding you blessed. Wanted to show you a tree of mine that I absolutely love. This tree is a nitrogen fixing tree, and it is just about ready to go to sleep, but it fixes nitrogen into the soil. It takes nitrogen from the atmosphere and sequesters it down into its roots via some root nodules, and it fixes the soil. It pumps nitrogen into the soil, and it also produces excellent tasting berries, little red berries with silver flecks on them. And this is a beautiful shrub, a large growing shrub, can reach heights of about 20 feet. This shrub is an Elaeagnus. It's in the Elaeagnus family, and it's called autumn olive. And it's a very cold, hardy, cold tolerant shrub. If you live anywhere from growing zone 3 up, you can grow this as a perennial. And it just has all kinds of uses. It, like I said, produces sweet little red berries in the fall time. It's excellent to eat fresh out of hand. The birds absolutely love the berries. So it can also be a distractor plant. If you have other fruit trees in your yards that the birds attack, this could be one to help distract. And it also has quite a few various medicinal uses. The flowers can be used for heart health. The seeds can be used for cough. You can make oil from the seeds to be used medicinally. And it's just an excellent plant to have into the garden. It is self-fertile, but with more than one variety or more than one autumn olive into your yard, you will get a larger harvest. This is just one of quite a few Elaeagnus that I have in this property. I also have several varieties of gummy berry and silverberry and the autumn olive. I've got two autumn olives currently in the yard. Another really neat thing with this bush or tree, fruit tree, is that in the springtime when it blooms, it has little yellow flowers. And these flowers are the most fragrant flowers in my yard, almost is probably better than jasmine, I would say. And you can smell these flowers from yards away. I mean, quite a distance, maybe even 10 yards, 30 feet. You can smell these flowers, and it is just the most fragrant smelling flower, sweet smelling flower, and they were just awesome. So I cleaned up around the bush with all the dreaded Bermuda grass, and I'm going to mulch it heavily. As you can see, I've got quite a few piles of Bermuda grass, so I'm going to mulch it. I just fertilized it with some biochar and some pears that I had left over, so it's been fertilized. And what I want to do here with it is I want to take some cuttings. I've got about 3 of these out in my greenhouse, but now that it's lost its leaves and it's going dormant, this is an excellent time to take some of these cuttings. I like to prune it to an open center. And so as you can see here, this last season's growth, all the large branches are going outwards as in a large vase type shape, which is excellent. But it's got quite a few center stragglers that are just ideal candidates for propagation. And so they're the most vigorous branches, and they're all within this season's growth. And so now that they're dormant, I'm going to go ahead and take a cutting, and I'm going to propagate it in some sand inside the greenhouse where it's nice and humid, and it'll stay warm, and it should propagate for me. So if you hang with me, I'll take a branch, and I'll see you over at my plant station. Okay, welcome back. I've got you out here at my plant station. I have my trusty old coffee can full of soil, or excuse me, sand. And I have 12 cuttings here, and I've also got some rooting hormone. And this is the Clonex. It's one that I prefer to use. It's just a better quality than some of the powders out there. The Elaeagnus, or autumn olive in this case, are pretty difficult to propagate, even by cutting. And so out of these 12, I'll probably only get maybe 25% take. It's a pretty small percentage. I do like to use sand. This is play sand from one of the big box stores, and it's already pre-washed, so make sure if you do buy sand for propagation, it is pre-washed and ready to go. But it's just the play sand from a big box store, and I have these in the coffee cans. I also put them in like oil holding containers, the big round oil ones. And so I'm just going to start with the cuttings here, starting now, and then through winter I'll start doing more and more cuttings, and then by the spring I should have quite a few new various plants. But I've got my cuttings here. They're all about pencil diameter, or more or less. A few are a little bit larger, a few are a little bit thinner, but pencil diameter is really the best means. And so as you can see at the base of these cuttings, I've taken my grafting knife and I've just scored them, going around in just like 2 or 3 different spots, and that'll just help with the rooting hormone. It exposes the cambium layer, and I think it just makes for a better rooting cut. So that's what I typically do with my cuttings, is I just score them with a grafting knife, and I try to just expose the cambium layer if at possible. So I've got my rooting hormone opened here, and I'll go ahead and just dip them in. So I'll start with the first and just give it a nice little dip, and then we'll put it in. And when I put it in, I just tamp around it just nice and gently to secure it into place. And I've got these pre-positioned, so just make sure that when you're doing cuttings that they're not upside down. So you have to keep that in mind the whole time that you're doing cuttings, is to keep in mind the orientation of them originally. And so you always want to make sure you know the orientation of the cutting. A lot of folks will make a diagonal cut at the tip, meaning that's the top of the cutting. I just always keep in mind which direction they were going. The Elaeagnus are also kind of thorny, so I went ahead with my pruning shears and I just trimmed up all the thorns to make them thornless. So just keep that in mind on certain cuttings. They may be a little thorny. And one other thing I forgot to mention with the Elaeagnus is that the berries are really high in vitamins A and E, and they're also full of antioxidants. They are a smaller berry, but they're absolutely delicious. And they do have a somewhat large seed into the center. So usually what I do with these, and most of the Elaeagnus are like that, is I'll just take them, eat them fresh out of hand. And I'll usually eat, a good handful of them. And it's kind of like a pomegranate where it's got the seed. And then I just put a whole bunch into my mouth, and I kind of roll them around my mouth with my tongue and just eat all the flesh. And then spit out the seeds if you want, or you can swallow them. The seeds are good for you. So that's usually how I eat them. But you can also collect them and dehydrate them, or make them into a jam or a leather. There's just all kinds of uses. But the main thing for me is the fact that it's a nitrogen fixing fruit producing shrub. And so it feeds everything else in its vicinity, which is an excellent feature for any permaculture landscape, is to have various fruit producing trees and support plants that just feed the soil naturally via their root nodules and and taking the nitrogen from the atmosphere and just pumping it into the soil. So it just builds the soil automatically, which is a super neat feature. Okay, I'm almost done here with these. Just a couple more here. And another really neat thing with this, with the fruit on this, is that since they do ripen in the fall, if you've got quite a few fruit-producing trees or bushes in your yard that are heavily spring and summer producing, this will actually extend your growing season, or not your growing season, but your harvest season, to where you can get harvest of fruit that much longer throughout the year. So it will add a nice fall crop that you can harvest. And ideally, if you're serious about growing food via fruit trees and orchards, you always want to have something producing fruit. Every month of the year, you want to have something coming ripe, and that way you always have something to eat. So that's just my 2 cents on it. And so if you can get various varieties of, you know, say stone fruit, where they ripen at different times, you can prolong, you know, say your peaches. If you got 2 or 3 different varieties of peach that ripen, come to harvest at different times, you can prolong that season. So that's essentially what you're trying to do in the permaculture setting, is to always have something coming due. The hardest part is the winter, but luckily for us here in Arizona, we've got citrus for that. So that's it. I've got 12 cuttings here, and the soil's already moist, so I'm not even going to wet them down. I may just put a small sprinkle on it just to get any air that's trapped in around the cuttings themselves. But with the rooting hormone on there, I don't want to put a whole lot of water in it and soak it. I really want that rooting hormone to you know, stay with the cutting. I do have some drainage holes on this. I don't know if you can see those on the bottom, but I have put drainage holes there so it won't get waterlogged. You just want to keep the sand moist but not overly wet, and you don't want it to dry out. So with it being in the greenhouse, nice and humid, it won't need water as often, and it'll hang on to that moisture. So it's just going to be the perfect conditions in there to get rooted cuttings. So I hope you found this video informative. I hope it helps you out, and I surely do appreciate you stopping by and watching the video today. And I hope you have a great day, and God bless you. Take care.